What's up, guys? This is Adi again with Universe International, and we are here for the second deep dive of the winter window. This one is for the new striker that we signed from Panserraikos, Jefte Betancor. Betancor is 31 years old. He is a right-footed striker, standing tall at about 6 foot 1 inches. It's about 183 centimeters, and about 80 kilos as well. So pretty big boy, about 176 pounds. Pretty large build for a striker. Now, guys, before I start talking about the player himself, before we start really talking about the what we can expect from this guy, if you're not aware of what has been going on with this transfer or what went on before he was officially announced earlier this week, it was a situation that was really chaotic. And Betancourt was first linked with us when Yaremchuk's future was a little more unclear. Then a series of really solid performances by Yaremchuk really kind of put the ice on this deal for a bit, at least until Hefte was announced, earlier in the week at the time of the recording. And when Olympiacos purchased him, the purchase was for 500,000 euros, and he would go back to Panserraikos, it was announced, for the rest of the season. So we're going to discuss the context, we're going to discuss the player, and without further ado, let's get talking about Jefte Betancor and get on with the deep dive. So, as we always do, we're going to start with the profile of the player, kind of how the player carries himself, what he does with the ball, and he's got a pretty decent center of gravity, decent ball control, especially for a player that's as tall as he is. He doesn't really have a lot of skill to get by a player directly one-on-one, but he's got a decent touch and he's got the mass, especially to give himself some distance, especially when he's in the penalty area, kind of just to get the ball away from somebody, give himself space enough to get a shot. And that's really where you're going to see some of the best hold up from him. If he can get a player on his left side, on his plant foot, he's very difficult to get around and dispossess, and he'll always be able to get somewhere on that right foot and not really get closed down before he can make a shot. So you'll see him pull pretty consistently 1 to 2 defenders, and which will give space to somebody else. Not very fast, not very agile either, so he's not gonna be a great target to use really to beat defenders in stride. So just something to be aware of, at least in terms of the player's, ability and profile there. Now, the signing is a bit more nuanced since he's not going to be playing with us this season. So we're going to evaluate based on his future value and on the short term what he could have had if he had stayed at Olympiacos, for the duration at least of this season. Now, let's move on. We're going to take a look at his stats in Greece this season so far, kind of how he stacks up to other forwards within Greece. And as you can see, especially on the goal creation side of things, it's pretty impressive actually. Betancourt can score from so many different situations. He can score headers off of set pieces. He can get scrappy goals. He can get goals from distance. He can crash the goalkeeper, gets goals off of rebounds. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Betancourt does not have a lot of similarity just for a singular type of goal scoring context. I mean, he scores from many different types of situations. But before you get excited about this, I do have to tell you that his absurd goal scoring form is pretty unique to this season. I mean, in his past seasons at Panserraikos, even, he wasn't close to being this prolific. He could score goals and he could be pretty effective, but not like what he's been doing this season so far. Always been a hard worker, always very useful too. Context is very diverse. Just like this season, even if we're looking beyond just his goals and we're looking at other types of shot opportunities, I mean, generally his goal scoring context has been pretty diverse. But the big difference between this season is his relentless presence in the penalty area and his remarkable efficiency. So normally I would tell you at this point, about his other shot opportunities, which, in this case, they're very similar to the goal scoring opportunities, very diverse. So there's not really much that I can tell you here. Now, as far as his assist creation goes, Betancourt in his career has very few assists. This season, he's got 0. His last assist was in September of 2023. So even when he does get an assist, it's either usually accidental or like a flick on something from a set piece. I saw a couple of open play assists where he would, make a switch from one side of the penalty area to the other. But, don't expect a lot of this. This isn't a guy that's going to create or give a lot of key passes or anything like that. He is primarily a target man, and if he is getting the ball in and around the goal, like anywhere remotely close and he has the ball at his feet, he's more than likely going to be taking a shot. So that's the type of player that you can expect from Jefte Betancor. He's not a guy that's going to be, we'll say, creating for his teammates. Now, in build up and possession, Hefty usually finds himself kind of at the top of the line, in his own third because Panserraikos, as we know, is not a possession leader in matches, and even against teams that are like mid low table, they tend to be a little bit deeper as far as position goes. Now, when Panserraikos does get the ball, Hefte's first moves are just usually to get forward. He'll drift sort of to the wing occasionally. Um, to assist sometimes. Usually it's to help with a give and go, get himself forward. He will occasionally drop back and assist in the build-up aspect of things. But again, usually just dumping the ball back in the midfield so he can get forward. Maybe he'll switch the midfield on certain occasions as well. But, even among forwards, he's really not getting a whole lot of touches. Not incredibly fast, as I've mentioned before. So you're not going to see him get into too many races with, the defenders in any context. But he is strong, very strong, which does help him in those. So even though he's not very fast, he's strong, which does kind of help him hold off defenders in that respect. Now, I'd imagine that in Mendilibar's system, his role and build-up maybe wouldn't be too dissimilar from what he does at Panserraikos. So, sure, in Greece, we're going to see more of the ball in the final third. I could see him a little bit more active with the ball at his feet there. But if we're playing in Europe, then I really could see him kind of operating really in the same way that he plays in Ceres. Pass accuracy is, pretty below average, as you can see on the chart, even compared to other strikers. Part of that kind of has to do with the fact that he does tend to get the ball with, few options to pass to, and then, maybe forces things. Some of it also has to do with the fact that, beyond 5 to 8 meters, he can misplace things pretty easily. It also has to do with the fact that if he gets the ball in the final third, he's making crosses, which, don't, as we all know, don't really have a high percentage chance of meeting somebody's feet, even if you're one of the best crossers in the game. So, and, he doesn't really have a lot of accuracy. He's just kind of kicking the ball up, hoping to put it in the right area. Again, if you were to ever play for Olympiacos, I would expect kind of all of these data points to increase because he would be kind of serving the ball less in the final third, getting more of the ball. He would be more involved in buildup, I think. So we would see him with more touches in general. So I do expect that overall the buildup and possession characteristics would increase in terms of what we're seeing here in the chart. Now, on the defensive side of things, when we talk about strikers, we really just care about, are they going to track back? Are they going to help press? And Hefte's a pretty hard worker. He presses adequately against the defensive line when Panserraikos is elevating the line, which is not very often. In the low block, he exerts effort to dispossess the ball from the attacker. So he's making runs, challenging. I saw plenty of activity. And then even on the defensive side of things, he gets his body in the way of shots relatively frequently. You could see in the defensive zone here, he's one of the highest in terms. He's one of the best forwards that actually gets his body in the way and blocks shots. So, and Panserraikos is eating a lot of shots, but not more than many of the mid and lower table sides. So this is a very interesting thing to see, and it's great to see. We love to see our offensive players doing the work to try and get back and help out their teammates. Now, while he's not overly successful in closing players down, we really are more interested in the press, like I said earlier. So there's effort there. He puts his body on the line to block shots. He's maybe a little bit slower doing a lot of this, but he's functional and he's a hard worker, and that's really what we care about above all else. In the air, he's all right, quite scrappy, but not incredibly successful, even among other forwards in Greece. Doesn't get a lot of goals or scoring situations from these types of things, set pieces, fighting in the air. Everything he does really is on the ground. I mean, that's where we're going to see most of his opportunities. So don't expect that you are getting any kind of set piece threat, at least when it comes to Jefte Betancor. Now, we've talked about the player's profile a little bit, and now this is where we get to the comparison. So, for the comparison, I decided to use Ayub El Kabi. Ayub El Kabi is our starting striker, so we wanted to see what Hefte does in comparison to that. How does he hold up? Is it a similar profile or not? And look, even though Betancourt isn't coming this season, we still wanted to really see if this guy could ever be something that's used at Olympiacos. Now, as far as his profile goes, we're sitting here looking at the radar plot, and the profile, the mold is very similar to Ayub El Kabi. What's more remarkable is that his scoring efficiency, in many respects, it's not just similarly as good as El Kabi, but his goal conversion percentage, the percentage of goals he gets from total shots, is better than El Kabi. He gets a lower volume of opportunities overall, and yet he has the same number of goals as El Kabi in the league. El Kabi sees more attempts because Olympiacos is on the ball more. So, this is very, very interesting for us to see. Now, El Kabi is a faster player. He runs faster. He's deadlier when playing up against the offside trap or up against the defensive line. We've seen Ayub El Kabi. Maybe he's not as great this season, but Ayub El Kabi is so dangerous when he's able to break from the defense and avoid the offsides, and then they can't touch him, and he gets great opportunities one-on-one with the keeper. Betancourt, though, on the other hand, is a little bit better ball control than Ayub El Kabi does. Ayub El Kabi can lose the ball, be a little bit more awkward with it at his feet, and Betancourt is a bit better in terms of that. He can distance himself from defenders a little bit better. So, dribbling, I'd say he probably has a little bit better technical ability. Now, while the two players do have a similar profile, the characteristics in possession, they differ slightly. As I mentioned, not only is Betancourt better at possessing the ball, at holding the ball and dribbling, but their movement is also a little bit different in possession. El Kabi likes to run central. He likes to just kind of get forward and receive the ball when he's going up against the center backs. Betancourt is more likely to make a run towards the wing or go wide, especially when he's holding the ball up. Uh, so some little differences in how they do things in possession. Now in the press, El Kabi, because he's faster, he's overall just more effective. He seems to have a little bit better IQ when it comes to the press, and I don't know necessarily if it's because the system with Mendilibar is a little bit more organized in that respect, but he just is more successful in the press than Betancourt is when he's also pressing the ball. At the same time, I doubt Panserraikos has anything remotely organized as Olympiacos' pressing system is. So, Panserraikos is their pressing scheme is not really existent, and they're low blocking more often than not. So, you know, like we discussed with our left backs with Onyemaichi and when we were talking about Ortega, at the very least, the same goes for the strikers. The two players that we're comparing here are extremely hard workers. And, it's not something that we can always take for granted when we're talking about, players that Olympiacos are looking at. Now, since we've talked about the comparison where you compared to El Kabi, we looked at the player's profile, it's verdict time. What do I think of this player? What do I think we're going to get out of him? And quite frankly, guys, there's so much that we could talk about and we could say about this transfer. First and foremost, why did we make it? If this was a move to make for the Greek league, assuming that we moved on Yaremchuk, why did we persist? Why did we persist when Yaremchuk caught form and we were clearly not getting rid of him? It doesn't make sense in that regard, especially when we clearly had no intent of selling Yaremchuk after those 2, 3 games of his that were fantastic, why would we go buy the league's joint top scorer just to send him back on loan to Ceres and not see him until the summer? I can't answer that question for you guys. I don't know why the club ended up pulling the trigger on this. But the best I can do for you is judge the value proposition of the transfer. And on one hand, I look at it and I say, hey, 500,000 euros for the league's top scorer playing for a smaller side like Panserraikos. And you think, that's a pretty great deal for money spent. This is the type of business that Olympiacos used to do. We would buy what we considered to be some of the best players in the league, and we would, use that. A lot of top teams in other leagues do the same thing. Bayern Munich does it. They buy the best players in Germany, and they've consistently been a powerhouse. So, you look at that and think this is business we used to do, and if we want to emulate the success of Bayern Munich, then we should probably do the same thing. Then you look at Hefte's career and you think, well, wait a minute. He doesn't normally have these types of scoring streaks. He's the top scorer for Panserraikos normally, but he's not scoring this many goals. So if he doesn't do this as consistently, is he going to be able to replicate this for Olympiacos? And then while you're pondering that, you wonder if he's even actually going to play for Olympiacos. Yaremchuk is turning up finally, and technically we still have a third striker in the young Babis Costulas. So where will there be room for Betancor? Are we going to sell Yaremchuk over the summer? Is that likely? And then even if we are, Betancor is turning 32 soon. I mean, are we doing anybody any favors, ourselves included, by keeping him on the back burner till the summer and just as he's continuing to age? I have to be honest with you guys, even though I am a fan of the profile, especially as a backup to Ayub El-Kabi, I don't think this is a piece of business that's really going to do anything for us, except maybe keep a player away from a rival. And that's even assuming that our rivals even wanted the player to begin with. You know what, though, guys? If the deal for Hefte is what caused Yaremchuk to turn up and give us more of what we expected from him from the get-go, then maybe it's 500,000 euros well spent. But if I'm looking at this signing, what it's giving us now, what it could give us, quite frankly, guys, it's a thumbs down. This is going to be a thumbs down for me. I mean, we're not complaining over 500K for a guy that's right now the leading scorer in the Super League, but he's on the wrong side of 30. There's no resale value here. And right now there's no future with the team. We've talked all summer about getting rid of waste. The club has been doing a lot of work to get rid of players that are not in the plans, get rid of lots of waste, lots of wages that the club has been paying that have been weighing the books down. And just as we've done so well clearing those books out and picking very specific players and not 30 players, here we went and we bought a player that's literally waste. Literally waste. The exact type of thing we were trying to avoid. I guess we'll see what happens over the summer with this, and maybe if we ever actually see Betancur wear our red and white, maybe that'll change my opinion. But as it stands now, this is a player that I could very well see never actually suit up for Olympiacos beyond maybe preseason training. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the second scouting report of the winter, the deep dive for Jefte Betancor. I admit this is not really a juicy one, especially given the situation, but you guys know there's at least one more scouting report coming. Spread the love if you love the scouting reports. Remember, they're exclusively available for Patreon members. Share the channel. Continue to help build the red and white community, and let's link up with everybody else that loves these scouting reports, loves data, always trying to improve them, always trying to give you guys the best insight I can. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you for the next one, guys. I'm Adi. This is Theos International, by the fans, for the fans.